Welcome to Pizza Talk. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and welcome back. A lot of you have been hanging in there with us from the very beginning. Some of you are new. Today, I want to introduce you to a guy who I have this sort of close Providence connection with, but we never get to see each other. And it's Billy Manzo, a world champion pizza maker, the owner and founder of the famous Federal Hill Pizza in Providence. And Billy's had a real interesting culinary journey into, his current, to this moment. What I'd love for you to do, Billy, is if you could kind of give us a sense of what that journey's been like, and how did you end up, getting into the pizza world?
It is, as you had said, it's quite an interesting story, Peter. I'm pretty blessed. I have a formal education, so I double majored and minored and had no interest at all in cooking, like no way. But I cooked my way through college, and you know where I am. Yeah. I'm out of Providence, Rhode Island.
That's right.
So I'm in one of a very concentrated culinary town with some amazing chefs and bakers and etc.
That's right. So and Providence for a long time has been a good pizza city. It's underappreciated nationally, but I mean, those of us who have lived there know what a great food scene there is.
Yeah,
and you're right in the heart of it in Federal Hill.
Yeah, it's a very intense, small, quality food scene. It really is. And a lot of those chefs, as you know, and a lot of the guys and girls that graduate from GIU practice in Rhode Island, and they go off and bring those talents to other parts of the country.
Yeah.
It's quite an interesting scene down here. So I ended up graduating with a degree in mass communications, political science with a minor in art history. And then
perfect for the pizza world.
like 0.00. Yeah. But I was the original busboy at the Blue Grotto back when you were probably up here.
Wow.
And the busboy and the cleaner and
right. We all start like that. And whether we go into food or not, we all start somewhere like as a busboy or a dishwasher somewhere.
Absolutely. And one thing leads to another, and I get into film and television. I was in publishing, really utilized my education and met some amazing people on the way. And, what's really funny, Peter, is I look back and some of the greatest meetings and some of the greatest people that I've met in the tobacco industry when I had a cigar lounge up on Atlas Avenue was around fantastic meals and good wine and really talking about getting the job done. And I look back and I'm like, my God, how important is food or pizza or, pizza's fun. It's a fun food.
Yeah.
It's a joyous occasion food. And it's happy food. So after I moved to the West Coast and I worked for Paramount Pictures for a little while, I always wanted to, I wanted to cook on a different, I wanted to learn. I'm constantly wanting to learn. It's just my personality. And I wanted to sell really expensive suits, and I wanted to learn, and I wanted to cook on a quote 5-star level.
I imagine you also probably had some really great and expensive cigars too, right?
Yes, I'm glad you said that. Yeah. So I ended up cooking for a fantastic, talented guy out of the West Coast who originally was in the East Coast. Who to this day I don't even know if he really knows what I'm doing, but. To this day, I never forgot him. His name was Michael Greenstein. And he hired me just because I was from the East Coast. And from his point of view, my work ethic would be amazing. Which
it's interesting, isn't it?
We're workaholics from the East Coast. So he hired me. And I was actually, Peter, getting taught from 4 or 5 executive chefs in this particular restaurant and didn't know I was learning. So I was learning how to do fried rice for family meal. I was learning about and then he said to me one day, he goes, you want to work at the, we're going to put you at the pizza station. I go, okay. Now we're talking back in 95, 96 when I was working for Paramount Pictures. So
this is in LA then? You were in LA?
No, I was in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, in Vegas. Okay.
And then I went and worked as a filler at a couple of other restaurants in Hollywood occasionally, because all the chefs, as you know, we all know each other.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. He'd say to me, can you go to LA this weekend and work and help out a friend of mine? I'd be like, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another. I came back to Rhode Island and opened up a cigar lounge. And then I never picked up a knife or fork, nothing, because that wasn't my formal education. And I opened up on Atwells Avenue amongst 36 restaurants.
You know,
And
for people who don't know Providence, Atwells Avenue is the street. It's the heart of Federal Hill, which is, you know, kind of our version of Little Italy in Providence, where so much history has been made, and some of it's scary history, but great food history.
yeah,
So there's a whole cluster of great restaurants there,
yeah. So
including Caserta Pizza.
Johnny is a very good friend of mine, and yeah. I mean, that was my go-to as a kid.
Yeah.
So one thing led to another. I opened up a cigar lounge nightclub. I was up on Atwells Avenue for 16 years, and in about my 13th, 14th year, the state really started saying, you know, you're going to do food. You got a liquor license, you have to do food. And Peter, I did not want to do food. I did not, because I understand how difficult the food industry is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the failure ratio, because of my business background and just who I am. I'm that type of guy where I do a lot of homework. And one thing led to another, and I started doing a hot dog, a hamburger, anything I could do, Peter, to avoid getting into the industry in a heavy way.
Right, right.
Then my mom and my dad said, didn't you screw around with pizza on the West Coast though? I'm like, oh, Mom, you have no idea. So I said, okay, screw it. No problem. Let's take a shot. Picked up a book, and I picked up your book.
Oh, now that I
And
didn't know.
I read your book, and from cover to back, I outlined it like I was back in college. And I ended up, and this is a funny story, I ended up going to Lowe's. I bought a house oven because I didn't want to make the big investment. And I had flipped floor tiles that were porcelain, and I flipped them upside down.
Right,
and I bought a big box, Peter, and I kept it next to the oven. I called a friend of mine who was a fireman. He got a fire blanket for me. I put it over the oven to make the oven hotter.
Yeah.
And I bought a used 30-quart floor stand, not a tabletop, Hobart mixer at that time. Just enough. I spent just enough of money where it wouldn't hurt me. And single phase Hobart, little 30,
Right.
stood about that tall. And one thing to another. And the first night I did pizza, I did 40 pizzas the first night in my bar, my cigar lounge.
And this was in this jury-rigged oven setup that you had done.
Yep.
Yeah, wow.
And I said, I don't need, forget this, I'm going into pizza.
You got pulled in like so many others. There's something so magnetic about pizza, isn't it?
I got to tell you, and I remember this distinctly. I had a cigar lounge for years, as you can imagine, beautiful bar, cognacs, whiskeys, bourbons. I know a lot to this day, knock on wood. I know all the owners. I never forget when I put the pizza on the bar, people lit up. People just, Peter, and I mean, people lit up. And I was like, okay. And the rest, next thing you know, the paint fell off the oven and I returned it 3 times. The manager of Lowe's came to me. And then what happened, Peter, was there would be a certain point where I'd put a pizza in the oven and we'd be walking around, the music would be playing, and I had a guy just watching the oven, like some dishwasher, and you'd hear, and he'd be like, oh my God, what happened? Like, don't worry about it. The porcelain tiles exploded.
Oh.
And I'd be like, throw away the pizza, sweep out the oven, it's hot, don't worry about it, throw 4 more tiles in.
Let's do it again, yeah. So you were baking them right on the tiles, the pizza, not in a pan?
No, right on the tile.
Because it's interesting, because you were doing bar pizza, which we just did a show, a whole week on bar pizzas, and you had your own way of doing it, which was to put it right on the hearth.
And the funny part is, I think that I fell into that rhythm because of pure naivete.
I just figured it out.
Yeah, and please understand, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass. I read your book. No, honestly, your book, and then I picked up another book, and then I called some people, and because people, I'm not scared to pick up the phone and call anywhere and talk to anybody. my theory is somebody like yourself or somebody like me now, we have a passion for what we do.
Right.
So if we get a phone call by some young gun who
Right.
wants to learn, if they want to learn, Peter,
That's right.
I'm willing to talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they've got to be willing to learn. I don't want any bullshit. You know.
That's right. I know. I hear you, and that's true. So many people want instant answers, and but they don't want to put in the work.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing you have to test when you're vetting somebody who's coming to you to like eat your brain, so to speak.
Yeah.
You know, and then you got to figure out, is it worth it for me to give them, you know, my energy right now?
That's right. So after that happened, we started making pizza in the cigar lounge, and everything started getting crazy and a lot of fun. And then a gentleman from Dublin, Ireland, who was the manager of a supermarket up here in Rhode Island, a beautiful supermarket, comparative to like a Whole Foods, but not Whole Foods, came to me, and he was a cigar smoker, and he said to me, "I wanna sell your dough." I'm like, "You want to do what?"
Yeah.
He said, "I wanna. We have a niche. We need a niche filled, and I want to buy your dough. Will you sell us your dough?" I go, "I know nothing about what you're talking about. If you're willing to teach me or whatever you do, I'd be happy to do it." He said, "Your product would fly, whatever." I said, "Okay."
Wow.
The same week, a woman came who lived on the west side of Providence, said, "I want to buy some dough off you. I hope you don't mind." I go, "Why?" She said, "Because I want to make it for my kids at home, and I like to make pizza." And I said, "I think I fucking got something here."
Yeah, it's kind of like you wonder, first of all, why don't they just make it themselves? But then you realize most people don't know how to do it, and they want you to do it. So you had a dough business. So before you know it, you were in the dough business.
I put my pizza dough by way of this gentleman's manager's guidance, and to give the viewer an understanding of where this was at this point. And I knew at this point I had known about the history of 00, but in single tipio double, but I didn't think about getting that. So I was working with a spring wheat, nice, clean, 13 and a half, as high as I could get, spring wheat, very simple, something you've heard of, which I will not say the name. And
you're allowed to, by the way. It's okay. We give shout outs to everybody who's doing good stuff. Yeah.
So I was using the standard, as you can imagine, the King Arthur, beautiful, very creamy, nice stuff.
Yep.
And next thing you know, I'm into 200 supermarkets. I have two vans on the road. I'm doing pizza skins. I invest my cigar lounge. Real estate in Providence had gone through the roof. So I shopped the lease for my cigar lounge. I couldn't find the lease. So you know what? I said, 16 years. I've had a great run. Let's try the dough ball thing.
Wow. Now, did you have a brand that it was sold under when it was in the stores?
Federal Hill Pizza.
You already had it, yeah.
I was in my office, and I was in front of my computer, and I said, I got to come up with a name and EIN number. I've got to keep these two companies separate. What the hell am I going to call it? So I went on the computer, Manzo's dough, this dough, that dough, pizza, this pizza, that pizza. And I said, God, I wonder if anybody owns the name Federal Hill Pizza. Nah, somebody's got to own that damn. You
would think. Yeah, it was.
I said, somebody has to own it, Peter. And I Googled it on my phone, and it came up that nobody owned it. And I said, there's no way, no friggin' way that no one owns this. I got in my car. The next day, I went down to the Secretary of State's office. I knew the young lady that worked there. I said, look up this name. She looked it up. She goes, can't be. She goes, nobody owns it. I said, okay, give me Federal Pizza, Federal Cafe, Federal Lounge, Federal Shoes.
Yeah.
It was like $20, $30 for the fictitious names. I locked up like 20 of them, you know?
That's incredible.
And then I went to my sign guy. I said, I need a little sign. And he goes, I think I've made that sign before. I said, you haven't. Nobody owns the name. So to make that part of it a little, get to the finish line a little bit, as you can imagine, Peter, when you start making, I'm working in a 125 spiral mixer that I had to call a gentleman in the equipment industry, and he said, this is the equipment you need. And things went very quickly, and I started practicing and making. I was buying 5 pallets of flour, 6 pallets a week. And it was
Yeah.
me, 2 other guys with a dough ball divider rounder, and just banging out tons of dough. And as you can imagine, when you're making that much dough, within 3 minutes of your mix, you know if it's going to be right. You just get to know.
Yeah.
And then what happens is when you're in the supermarkets, you have restaurants picking up that dough to see how they like it as in either a bar menu item or something. And now I'm getting phone calls from those owners saying, listen, do you mind coming by and maybe putting together a recipe for me? And I'm like, let me come by. I know what I know. I know what I don't. So let's go through the process. And then I really, by way of just reading and calling people and calling the head of science at General Mills down in Texas and you know, grinding his ear and he told me what book to buy. And I could tell you really, this is a good one. I'm at my first Pizza Expo, maybe 90, I don't know, 98, whatever it was.
Like over 20 years ago.
Yeah, and a gentleman taps me on the shoulder, and I go, yes. And I had a chef's coat on with my name on it. At that time, Tony had just invited me on to be part of the World Pizza Champions.
Wow.
And I had my name on the back of my coat. And he comes up to me, and he taps me on the shoulder, and he says, excuse me, are you Chef Billy Manzo are you from Rhode Island? I said, yes, I am. He goes, are you the maniac that's calling the science guys in Texas and asking them? I go, yeah, that's me. He goes, we need to talk to you at the General Mills booth because everybody at corporate wants to meet you because they want to know who the maniac is.
That's funny. That's funny.
I immediately, very humble, built a reputation for, and again, I'll say it the way it is, and then I'll give you my interpretation. My reputation was, he's a maniac with pizza dough. But I take it as I'm a person who's done my homework in a career right now that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So I tell people, and I do a lot of, at the Castle Cinema, which, me and my wife purchased in Providence. I tell young people who come and take a class with me, I say, if you want to be a plumber or an electrician or somebody who does a roof or whatever it is, you have to start out as an apprentice. You have to learn the basics.
Yep.
You cannot get to here without learning here.
Right.
It is impossible, Peter. And I think what makes people like you, which I'm very humble about, to ask me to speak, is I've put the time in, but I've educated myself. I'm humble enough to talk to people who know more than me, and I'm learning.
But what I'm finding interesting is that when you made that decision to kind of go all in and kind of, you stumbled into this dough business, which turned out to be a great entree for you, but then you leveraged it. Somehow you connected with Tony Gemignani, right? And he's putting a team together. And so you went very quickly, it sounds like, and your learning curve was pretty quick to go from just basic dough and a bar pizza that you improvised to something that now has become competition worthy, internationally, competitive. And there's a lot to say about all that. Why don't we do this? How about taking us on a little a tour of the castle that you were just referring to, your pizza, Federal Hill Pizza, which is right around the corner from where you are now.
Right around the corner.
And so we'll pick this up in segment 2. And I want to hear more about this part of the journey for you, how you went from a bar pizza guy who was making dough to a champion pizza maker who now people come to because you make every style and do it really, really well. And I know that there's a lot of people that have similar stories. They got into it however they got into it. We all started at fundamentals.
Sure.
And somehow through passion and dedication took it to another level. So in segment 2, when we come back, I want to hear more about taking it to the next level with Billy Manzo at Federal Hill Pizza in Providence, Rhode Island, on Federal Hill. Is the castle on Federal Hill also?
The castle's in Chalkstone Avenue, and in the second segment, we'll get into the story.
All right, beautiful. Come back with part 2 with Billy Manzo. We'll see you then. We're back with Billy Manzo. Now we're at Billy's pride and joy. One of his, you got more than one restaurant, but this is the one near your house, right on Federal Hill, which we've been referring to as the Castle. It's Federal Hill Pizza, and the old Castle Theater, which is where that term is coming from, right?
Yes, you have nailed that accurately, Peter.
I wish I had gone to see movies at the Castle Theater when I lived in Providence. I've been out of Providence now about 16, 17 years. So a lot of what's happened and what's happened with you happened, after I moved out. When did you actually open Federal Hill Pizza?
Me and my wife made a commitment to me and my wife bought the building 4 years ago. And it was 5 years ago. And the piece of property had laid empty for about 16 years. And we ended up looking at all different properties across Rhode Island, Southern Massachusetts. And it was a good deal for us on the real estate end. Peter, I'm not a speck humble when it comes to this by me telling other pizzeria owners and restaurant owners that after working your ass off in our industry, and I actually spoke about this a few years ago as a guest speaker at Pizza Expo, and I made it, it was the first time anybody had ever spoken about it, which, and I'm being quite honest with you, it didn't get rave reviews at the time when I was speaking, but the conversation was really the business aspect of what we do, which is worry about the future. Invest your monies into a piece of property. So, as you know, what the Greeks did was they started these pizzerias given up by the Italians in the early 70s.
Right.
And then what they did was they opened up these pizzerias, but what they did more than anything was they invested that money into the property. So when the late 80s rolled around and they were ready to retire, and remember, those days were heavily cash. Those were cash years.
Right.
So they then turned around and sold those pizzerias, but they didn't sell the property. So they sold the pizzerias anywhere in between, who knows, whatever the gross income was based on the division of taxation, and also the Greek telling the new pizzeria owner, which was Middle Eastern at that time, that was the new group coming in, and they sold the pizzeria, held the paper on the pizzeria, and then rented the spot.
Wow.
So,
interesting.
And that was my
smart business.
And that's my experience in the Northeast corridor. So what we had was a Greek young entrepreneur coming to America. Parents probably gave him a little bit of startup capital, bought this pizzeria, rented it, and then flipped the pizzeria, sat on the property, was getting it from both directions, literally up until now, that I still know some Greek guys in their middle 80s who are still sitting on their property, Peter, and getting rent.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a very interesting story because, from the business standpoint, as you said, you always have to be thinking about the future because the future is going to come whether we like it or not. And,
That's right.
And at some point you have to have an exit strategy and a plan.
Yeah, and a lot of these, what I found was, it's so funny, and that's a great point you just made when you said the word exit strategy. A lot of these old-time Greek guys, well, now they're old-time, back when they were kids, they loved the pizza industry. They just fell in love with it. So every so often, I know of two of my friends in the industry who own, quote, historical Greek pizzerias, and they go, oh, Steve still comes in at 87 just to walk around.
Right. Well, I just was thinking, I've been living in Charlotte, North Carolina for like 16, 17 years now. So when I left Providence, Federal Hill Pizza hadn't opened yet. What I knew of pizza in Providence, my two go-to places were, of course, everybody goes to Caserta's because it's the most famous of the pizzerias right there on Atwells Avenue. But then we had a small little place down on the east side called Fellini's. Do you remember Fellini's? Is that still there?
I got to make you laugh again. I had my advertising agency and I had my magazine in the state of Rhode Island called, and I started a publication, which is still around today. Now it's called Providence Magazine. I had done all the original photography for their advertisements the local. So Peter was the original owner of Fellini's. Fellini's is still around. It's still exactly where you remember it. It still does a whole wheat crust
That's right.
at approximately a 60, maybe a 55% hydration, because it's putting it in a blanket. So they use a rolling pin, and then they spin it. They cut it. They have to cut that with obviously some form of spring wheat, because you know as well as I do, a whole ground is a short liver if you're in the pizza industry with the amount of sugars that are in it. And so they cut it a little bit probably, and they have a great product. It's a fun product.
It was the Providence's version of like a slice, a slice shop, and it was close to Brown, close to where the university is, and very close to my other favorite go-to place in the city at the time, which it probably would still be if I lived there, was this Al Forno with the grilled pizza. And then there was Timmy's. Is it Timmy's or something that was up on the hill that also was doing a form of grilled pizza, right?
Yeah,
Are
Bob
they still
and
there?
Timmy's, and Bob and Timmy's, and then you're talking about George, and George has passed away at El Forno.
At El Forno, he kind of invented the concept that we call grilled pizza now.
Yeah, pretty much by accident in southern France. So, I mean, aren't those the best ways when you figure out a product sometimes is completely by accident?
Exactly. And he told me a funny story, because George also is great. George Ramon was the creator of this grilled pizza, but Al Forno's was much more than grilled pizza. It was one of the most sought after high-end Italian restaurants, so kind of neo what's the word I'm thinking? Neo-traditional, modern Italian cuisine. And they threw that on as something to order at the bar while you're waiting for a table. And it caught on so big that it became almost a signature item. And his father comes in one day and he goes, George, what are you doing? You used to make pizzas as a kid. What are you doing messing with pizzas now? I thought you were going to be a chef. And George says, Dad, you don't understand. This is paying the bills, And he said, so somehow he thought he was out of pizza and he got pulled back into pizza, but in a new way. And it's really, once you've had one of the Al Forno grilled pizzas, it kind of totally ruins you for, not for that style. Because I haven't seen anyone do it quite as good as they did it. Although there may be now some places doing it. So we're back at your place at the castle. Show us what you're doing and how you're set up there. And I don't know if it'll work for you, but can you turn your cameras sideways so we get the more panoramic view? There we go. Yeah, much better. There we go.
Okay. So let me show you guys a little bit around so you get what's going on. We'll start at the beginning really quick. I'll move quickly. So what had happened was, this was the original entry of the 1925 vaudeville movie theater. In this particular area, let me see if I can flip this screen. I'll flip it and talk. Okay. So this particular area was the original entry. And then there was a theater door in this area. These bathrooms were not here. This is the original round decorative with artwork that used to be painted. And this is also an area that used to be painted. That particular unit is about 150 pounds. And I can't tell you what a pain in the ass it was to take it down and paint it. Horrible experience. These areas, I brought in some brand new to imitate what I thought would be here. Same area here, some really classic round areas, like up in that dormant area. And then they have the original little sign. So I turned them into Naples at 6,835 kms away from this spot. And then I did the same thing here with this particular light box, an original light box from probably the 70s. And I turned that into Venezia. And then my grandparents are from Rocco Mofina.
Wow, so what a great way to pay tribute. Yeah.
So let me explain to the viewers the theme. The theme is Naples. And that's why I went with the powder blue color. And the theme is actually, if you were to come into Naples, Italy, Naples with soccer, as you can see here, is powder blue. So we have a little bit of light powder blue going on. And then as you come into Naples, you're coming into the port of Naples. And that's why I have the pallets, because of shipping and receiving in the port of Naples. And I tried to relate the pallets to, and then what you do is you come into the city of Naples. There's an area where there's rope and because, there's shipping and receiving in the port of Naples. And then we literally just put all of the flour, my shipping and receiving boxes, and all the flour and raw material at the port of Naples when it gets shipped in there. And then also we have a homage to that in the port of Naples, a little area. And then obviously we have, what's that, Peter?
I'm not, my screen is so small I can barely see.
That's a Puccinella.
Oh, yeah, okay. So that's the clown holding a pizza, right?
That's right. And the history, and if your viewers don't know, the Puccinella history is a self-respected Neapolitan. Every area in Italy has its own garment of what represents. So Venice is very decorative. All these different areas of Italy and areas have a different style of Puccinella. In Napoli, it's all white with the black mask. And some of your viewers will see sometimes an older gentleman with a little child in the Puccinella outfit. And what that really represents is somebody who has an immense amount of self-respect and dignity, but they're poor and they're actually begging for money or food. But in Italy, they wouldn't give you money. Or in Italy, they would give you food. And that's what the Puccinella represents, Peter.
Interesting. I never knew that. I never knew about the different kind of costumes that were related to the regions and the cities.
And then, so now you come into one of the main rooms, which is approximately 2,200 square feet.
So this was like this main room was like where the theater part was, when it was a burlesque theater.
Yes, and Peter, this entire space, including that wall, this wall right here where my finger is actually a wall. This wall behind the bar was actually put up in the late 60s, early 70s. And because of the competition with the enormous movie theaters, they divided this building in 3 ways to adapt to the inner city to show 3 movies instead of 1 movie. So there's one screen. In the other room, which I will show you, is another screen. I'll show you. These screens are from the early 70s. I'll show you right now. This is going into the other room. As you can tell, we have a cutout. This was the sound. So this was the sound wall in between this theater and this theater.
Wow.
So we cut the wall out, which was a temporary sound wall. And there is the other movie screen.
Amazing. Now those screens are they just screens, or do you actually broadcast on them?
Yes, so we do. So again, Peter, the model of as you can tell, we have these. We had a group of 5, 6 people here doing a little job they needed to do. But this space holds legally about 140 people, and then this space legally holds about 65, 70 people. And then the challenge of this property, Peter, was that the people who invested a lot of money into this property put in the floor 6,000 square feet of radiant heat, when radiant heat was extremely expensive to put into a. So anything that we did, Peter, in this building, we had to use, I'll see your face, we had to use liquid nail. So basically this bar is a cinder blocked, that corner has 2. It splits off, and in this area somewhere here, and here, we ended up doing cinder block posts.
Wow.
And liquid nailed those to the floor because we couldn't put any nails in the floor. And so let me explain to your viewers something interesting that I hope they can find interesting. So anyway, just like you show, these are some of my favorite people. And that's obviously, if your viewer can see, Elvis Presley. So that's Elvis
Uh-huh.
Presley. The Honeymooners, Lucille Ball, and Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, wow.
And
Iconic
somebody who
face.
I absolutely love his artwork is Andy Warhol. So let me explain something to
Okay.
your viewers that I find to be incredibly important. These tables that I have and I had made are very wide, Peter, very wide. And the reason why I made them very wide is because I certainly could do that. I had the space to do it and the luxury to make this table very wide. But
Right.
when you're doing an Al Taglio pizza, 12 by 18 inch pan or a 16 by 16 inch pizza, the goal of my property and the model was to make the consumer sitting here, putting a beer here, a 16-inch pizza in the middle, an appetizer, another beer. We made these tables very big because we knew mathematically from a business perspective that we wanted to turn that table 2 or 3 times. But because of the size of property, maybe we couldn't do that. So let me explain my point. That table's wide enough to put 2 appetizers, a pizza, a beer, and you don't feel as if you're jammed up. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yep, absolutely.
So let me explain. This bar is a bar I had made. This bar is made out of blue steel. The average bar, I would say, if your viewers have ever built a bar in their restaurant, is not cheap, Peter. It's not cheap.
Right.
But I did my bar, the top of my bar, and I'm not bullshitting. I did the top of my bar for $650 because this is blue steel, which also goes into the same material that I use my pizza pans for. And it literally is heavy enough and wide enough. Watch how wide this is. Now, my arm is from shoulder, watch this, shoulder to hand. It's approximately 2.5, almost 3 feet wide bar. And again, Peter, the reason why I did that is because if you're sitting at the bar, I want you to be able to order a tag pizza, Al Taglio, or a 16-inch pizza and feel very comfortable that you can order that amount of food. And that was just something that I was very lucky to have the space to be able to do that.
Right.
So
well, that's so cool that you're thinking too about that experience, that customer experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
So let me show you this. So this is where we do our 12s and our 16s spin. This is our spinning area, if you may. Completely food safe. It's been like that forever. And then we have that on pallets. And the reason why we put it on pallets is because when you're in the Port of Naples and lunchtime comes, people will put a tablecloth or something on a pile of pallets and just eat lunch and just have lunch.
Right. Total improvisational alfresco lunch.
That's right. And then what happens is I'm going to be standing where my pizzaiolo is spinning. And as you're spinning your dough, you're looking out over the people.
Wow. Now, and behind you are your ovens, right? Those are big wood-fired ovens?
Yes. I also want, because I can't help it, I'm a little bit in the business thing. Everything in this area, Peter, everything here is on mobile. My wheels, that can be picked up and moved. Everything can be moved. So if I do a special event of any capacity, I can make it adjustable to my consumer base. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like having that theater background. You know, you're kind of always ready to your stage is a blank canvas that you can turn into anything.
You're 100% right. So these are what you call, these are my kids that I call, these are my babies.
The beauties.
I have 2 Gianni and Kuntos. We run, so let me explain what I do. We normally run the one on the right, and then I will get the, quote, charcoal, and I bring that because I'm quite a brat. I'll be the first one to admit that. Not all pizza places can do this. So I get that charcoal, and I bring it to this oven. I run this oven at about 300 to 350 degrees, just because it's runoff, Peter, from this. Do you understand my point?
Yeah, so you can move, you got some more throughput.
And I can actually now have
2 different heating sources. So I can run my 780, 805 here, and then I can run my 3 change here. So if I want to do, let's say for example, for some reason, my wholesaler calls me and says, I got some stuff I'm bringing to you right now. We want to play with that. I'm like, absolutely, bang. We can cook it right in that oven. And it can be, so my roasted peppers can go on you know what I mean?
Right,
my roasted peppers, anything at that 3 to 350. And I can make an adjustment, Peter, based on, and I hope again, the people that are watching this truly understand, because this is something that I learned from a friend of mine in Italy. This piece of wood is what I call a 4-degree piece of wood. Okay, it's approximately that. This piece of wood is like an 8-degree piece of wood. And this big boy right here is a 10-degree piece of wood. So when I'm saying to the people out there who either want to get into this industry or are in this industry, and you may not have thought about this, is you have to have a flame piece of wood. So this guy is something I would throw in, or Peter, fir.
Right.
So I'm not going through an enormous amount of wood.
Right.
You have to run your business, and the consumer has to be happy to see and educate. Now you may say, or your viewer may say, Billy, and I've heard this, Peter, Billy, you're way the fuck over the top. Like you're just but let me tell you, Peter, and I'm a firm believer in this. When you go to this table or that table and you have consumers in and you start talking about the industry and what you know, and they ask you, you know what, I'm thinking about putting a brick oven in my backyard. And you start talking to them about the details of how to save money or enjoy or get the most out of it, you're building credibility with your consumer. They now know unconsciously, immediately, wow, this guy, he just knows, he did his homework. Like he gets it. He just gets it. And I'm always looking to make sure that if I'm going to talk to a consumer or a young person or even people that buy and sell firewood come in and they get excited because like they say to me, Billy, we're going to bring you samples. And they don't have to worry about me not knowing what I'm talking about. And then, Peter, what happens is you're building the family. You're building these people who are loyal to your brand because the love of what you do, like the guy who does brick and mortar, he'll come because he loves to see the oven. The guy who sells the wood, he'll come to see the ovens. The guy who gave me this, okay? So this station, right? And this will make you laugh your ass off. This is a blown out pizza station. Now, what I mean by being blown out is I gutted it out. I took all the condenser out of it, the doors off. I gutted all the guts out of it. And what I did was I just turned and I do ice. And as you know, in the Rhode Island Department of Health, you have a 4.5-4-hour window for food safety. So we put ice in it. And guess what, Peter? People eating in the dining room do not have to hear that condenser going on. And as you know, being here, Peter, that condenser will suck the flour into the condenser. And then we've got all sorts of problems.
Yeah.
And then you have extension wires. So I can do this. Look. And I can move this station anywhere I want in my dining room.
Right. There it is. And you're basically both a brick and mortar restaurant, but you're also essentially a mobile restaurant.
Yeah. So let me show you if you would like. I'll show you the kitchen because we have a full kitchen, and I know you're going to see some of this equipment that you enjoy. And we have a double deck capono, which I absolutely love. And this is the oven that I put my El Taglio. I have 12 burners. I have 3 fry later, a 5-foot flat, and a 2-foot char. And Peter, you may say, my God, Billy, you have so much equipment. Yeah, I have to. I mean, this building holds legally almost 350 people. So to give you an idea, I don't know if you remember this, but there is a phenomenal nonprofit out here, and it's called, I'll flip, and it's called Gloria Gemma. And the Gloria Gemma Foundation, it fights cancer. 2 years ago, I fed in one day because I was humble enough to receive that contract. And this building handled the volume blindfolded with my staff. We fed in one day 1,500 people.
Wow. Wow.
So
That's a number that came to my mind. I thought you were going to say that 1,500.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we did approximately 38 hotel pans worth of food.
Well, let me ask you something, because everything you just shown us is exciting, and before we run out of time, I want to go back to what we promised in the first segment to people. Is what you're showing us now is a far leap from what you started making, the improvised, bar pizzas, and sort of your entry into it, and then the transition through working with people like Tony Gemignani into sort of this next level, and what your attention to detail and all the thoughtfulness that you put into all of the choices that you make are obviously hard-won life lessons that you've accrued over the years. Tell us very briefly, if you could, Billy, that journey from the point of transitioning from sort of the startup phase of the newbie in the pizza world to becoming world renowned.
So yeah, what a story, right? I mean, my goodness.
I don't know if we have enough time. We may have to have a whole other show for this, but if you can give us the Reader's Digest version.
Absolutely. So to make obviously, I was invited to go out of nowhere. I was invited to go to the U.S. Championships at that time in Florida. I went. I was invited by PMQ magazine. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a joke. I had a call to confirm. I put the food on the plane. I had no idea, Peter, what I was doing. I competed. I came back, and then I received a phone call from a guy named Tony Gemignani.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's like, I heard you in Florida. I go, who is? Basically, I'm like, yeah, who is this? And he tells me who he was. And he goes, listen, I heard, basically you kind of know what you're doing, but I'd like to invite you to go to a thing called the World Championships in Italy. And I go, what are you talking about? So he goes, so I look it up. We're talking a long time ago in Salsa Maggiore. So,
see if you can hold the camera up just a little higher, because we're only getting the bottom. There you go. Yeah.
So one thing leads to another. I go to Italy. I meet him. I was like, what do you want to do? One thing led to another. He invited me on the team, which I was very humble about. At that time, it seemed to me that, which I was really happy about, because I can't do acrobatics for shit. That's not my thing. But my thing,
me either.
My thing was more on the culinary end. And I think that Tony is probably, when it comes to a future visionary of like where it's going, or he has an uncanny ability of doing an immense amount of homework and understanding, what he thinks the future will bring. Really, really uncanny. Quite a gift. And then
among his many talents, aside from being so brilliantly talented in every facet, is he's also a great talent scout. And when he goes out to any of these events, he's looking for people like you who he can say, oh, that's my kind of person. I want to bring them onto my team.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very uncanny. It's a talent. I mean, it really, really is. And I met some great guys. He really shifted the acrobatic team into a little bit more what I think he felt. And again, I've never really spoken to him on this, but he brought in a couple of culinary guys to like tweak and go from acrobatics to culinary. And I am so humbled that, me and Glenn and Tony Boombatz, we were like maybe the three first guys in the culinary end of things. And then the rest of the history, the team goes through the roof from there, yeah, it's been a hell of a ride.
So would you say that you're exposed, when you got to go to Italy for these things and be exposed to other facets of the bigger picture of the pizza world, that was like a huge breakthrough for you?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was. Yeah, it was. The first time I went, it was competing in a field of over 600 people was Pizza Olympico. Never mind, I just went for Pizza Olympics, or it was Pizza Olympico, and I was a little naive to see that many people in one building competing in pizza, but I kind of went and I did my thing. I competed very, very. I finished phenomenal my first year in pan division. I think first time out of the gate, I finished. My ranking was like top 50 or 60 out of 500 or 600, whatever it was, guys.
Right.
And when Tony was coming up, if my memory suits me, he's like, they all want to know who they want to know who the hell the American is. I go, well, he goes, so, thank God I made him look. I respected the team well. And at that time, I don't think I wasn't even on the team at that point. But the guys that I met on the team were really friggin' cool, nice guys. Everybody loved pizza. And, the rest is kind of history with like sponsorship now and like Galbani Corporation. And, I've got over 25 sponsors that.
Well, that's the cool thing when I see you at the expo walking through and you got your jacket. You're like a NASCAR driver. You've got patches for about all these different companies on your jacket. It's incredible. Like you're carrying almost the entire industry. Their logos on your shoulders and arms and backs. Well, listen, Billy, this has been phenomenal, and it's been really. We didn't even get to talk about some of the new work you're doing with different kinds of flour, but the point is this trajectory that you've been on, and it's not an overnight journey. It's a hard-working, daily grind, but rising that took you from very simple beginnings into something to where you're doing visionary work. You and a few people that are kind of setting the bars for the future, and we really appreciate that. We can't wait for you to be able to reopen the castle for in-house dining. We're all, everyone's tired of this phase, but we know that you've also been able to keep the ball rolling. You have another place down in southern Rhode Island, is it?
Warren, Rhode Island.
In Warren, yeah. So you're keeping the doors, open, keeping the cash flowing until that time where you can kind of bring people back into the big theater that you've created there, and hopefully by that time I'll be able to get back up to Providence and come by and everybody who I talked to who's had your pizza comes back raving about it and going,
Thank you.
And so I want to thank you again. Thank you for being with us on Pizza Talk and for all the hard work you're doing, and I love the way you're thinking about this. And
Thank you.
It's just that thing about the customer experience, I think, is just so important and often forgotten.
Well, listen, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to send you some of my frozen pizza, and I'm going to send it to you. After this, I'm going to send it to you because now we're shipping all over the country.
Wow.
Because there are people that want federal pizza all over the country. So
if they want to get it, how do they get it? Do they get it through Goldbelly or directly through you or what?
It's shop.federalhillpizza.com.
Shop. Okay. So folks, make note of that. Check it out. Order some pizzas. By that time, I will have had one. I'll be able to give it my love, and I'm looking really forward to that. Billy, remind me. I'll send you my address, and I will be on the lookout for that pizza. Thanks so much, and thank all of you for watching today. I hope you picked up some really great ideas. It's fun to be around people who are thinking, in sort of this. You feel the connections, the dots being connected left and right, and I've enjoyed hearing how you did that in your own, not just your culinary journey, but from college to to what you're doing now. The breadcrumbs it can take you into unusual places, but I always say keep following the breadcrumbs because you never know where they'll lead you. Billy Manzo, thank you.
Thank you for what you do for pizza, Peter. Thank you.
My pleasure. I love being a part of it. And we'll see you at Federal Hill Pizza, all of you. And join us for the next episode of Pizza Talk. Thanks.